some 4,000 articles on Bhagavad Gita. Revo. So Prabhu has been invited as a speaker in TEDx, in World Peace Conference of UNESCO, very, very prestigious, in Intel, in Google, in Microsoft, Salesforce, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, MIT, and Cambridge. Revo. And just while here, yesterday itself, Prabhu also gave seminar in Dushaj Bank. So Prabhu has been constantly giving seminars, and gives 400 talks across 100 countries in 4 continents every year. Revo. So 400 talks every year means you can understand the frequency, more than one in a day. And so personally for all of us, Prabhu has been very affectionate to us. I remember when we were in Kharagpur in 2005, 6, those days Prabhu would be with us and take our device training. So Prabhu was so much very personally helping us and coming to Kharagpur very often and guiding us very nicely. And so we are so fortunate to grown under Prabhuji's personal association. And although he is very great personality, very well known, but he is always very much easily available to all kinds of audience. Prabhu is accessible to answer questions of senior devotees, to the level of like he is also in Shastik Advisory Board, where Prabhuji gives advice to many senior, even the GBC leaders on some Shastik discussions. And simultaneously to a very new person who has not even come to Krishna consciousness, Prabhu is available to give him also wonderful association and answers. Haribo. And Prabhu is very dear to Radhanath Swami Maharaj, Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj, Jayadvait Maharaj, so many Srila Prabhupada disciples. Radhesham Prabhu has such amazing affection and appreciation for Prabhuji. And also, personally in my life, I have seen his articles, and his personal association has helped me in so many varieties of ways, clearing intellectual doubts and also giving so much practical guidance in my life. So I feel really very honored that we are getting opportunity today to directly hear from Prabhuji, not only today, today is the beginning, next 5 more days to go. We are going to have a powerful, power-packed association of Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So let us heartily welcome Chaitanya Charan Prabhu to our Durga Puja camp by 3 times loudly chanting Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai.
Isn't that too far away behind? Can everyone see that? If I write something, I'm not sure it will be visible. Is this visible? Both. Yeah, we'll talk about that. True. And then what does it do? Okay. So we could say, broadly speaking, the soul is here, the mind is here, the body is here. So if we consider our existence to be three level, this is the self. Soul, mind, body. So basically, to continue reiterate the metaphor which one of you had used, the body is broadly like the hardware, the mind is like the software, the soul is the user. Now within the body, there is the brain. So we could say the brain is like the CPU. So the brain is a physical organ, just as the CPU is a physical unit within the hardware. Now, if you see in this structure, I'm using a minimalist model. There is the subtle body. In the subtle body, you can talk about the ego and the intelligence. Let's not get into that right now. Like we use the word software. In software, you can have a virus. In software, you can have an operating system. You can have user-installed apps. You can have varieties of software. But here I'm using the mind generically to refer to the part of us which is the link between the soul and the body. Krishna also uses in this sense. Say for example, he says, we have to control our mind. Or if we control our mind, it is our friend. Otherwise, it becomes our enemy. So there he's not bringing, you have to use your intelligence to control your mind. Just use a straight we and our mind. So the minimalist model. So this is, Krishna is broadly talking about 6.5 and 6 in terms of the flashlight. So this is the light source. And from this light source, a beam of light is coming out. So like that, the source of light is the Atma. And that is the soul. And what comes out from the Atma is the Chaitanya. It is the beam of consciousness. So we could put it this way, that the consciousness comes out. The consciousness comes out from the soul. Is this color visible? Okay, good. So the consciousness comes out from the soul and goes through the mind, through the body to the outer world. And that is how the processing of information happens. Now, in this conceptual model, the soul is the root of consciousness. The mind is the root of consciousness. So one is the root, is the source. The other is the root or the route, which is the pathway. So normally, consciousness has two functions. It is the light of awareness. It is through consciousness that we are aware of things. So this light of awareness function is associated more with the inflow of information. It is associated with the Jnanendriyas. Jnanendriya, what does the word mean? Knowledge acquiring senses. So it is the beam of light that is coming out. So right now, say you are looking over there. So through your eyes, your consciousness is coming out and it is taking in the information. And then the consciousness also plays the role of energy for action. So for example, if you read something which seems to be interesting, so that information comes in, and that information comes, hey, this is interesting, I want to note it down. Then the consciousness as energy is going to your fingers, and you're noting something down. So there is This part is associated with the karmendriyas. That we could put it another way, that the mind is like the center point, and into the mind the jnanendriyas bring in information, and through the mind the karmendriyas receive our intention for execution. So the mind is the interface. In the 15th chapter, Krishna talks about this. Shrotram chakshuh sparshanam cha rasanam ghranam eva cha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. So if we consider the mind to be like a screen, then there are 5 inputs coming in over here. Which are those 5 inputs? The 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Which are these? Eyes, ears, nose, so tongue and skin. So we get various kinds of information. And then there are the 5 action senses. From there, our intention flows out. So our hands, our legs, then what else? Our voice, we get things done through our speech, and then the reproductive and the excretory organ. So basically, through these, our intention flows out, and all of these are centered on the mind. So it's important to understand that the mind is functionally invaluable. It is indispensable. It's like the center point where everything comes in. And while we do consider that the mind can be our enemy, but Krishna's approach itself to the mind is nuanced. Now, if say something is and somebody is an enemy, then like say right now there was a war going on between Israel and the Hamas and the Hezbollah. So the Hezbollah had a leader, Nasrallah, who was the enemy, and Israel just bombed and killed him. So now, if you have an enemy, you can just kill the enemy. But does Krishna say kill the mind? No. What does Krishna say? Sorry? Control it. But control for what purpose? Make it a friend. It is not destroy the mind. It is not control it to make it your slave. It is not to make it even a slave also. So, it's a very interesting dynamic. It's an enemy, but it is an enemy not to be destroyed and not even to be enslaved. Krishna is not recommending any of this. It's the enemy that is to be converted into a friend. Now the word befriended is could be a misnomer. It is more not that we become the friend of our mind, which is there, but it's more that we make the mind our friend. So it is to be transformed. So the idea here is that the mind itself is not our enemy. It is what is inside the mind is our enemy. Inside, what is inside the mind? There are impurities, there is lust, anger, greed. So what is inside the mind? And that is also who is the enemy? Not the mind itself. Because that's, we would say that it has to be destroyed. It is what's inside the mind. And that means it's not everything that is inside the mind. It's like say a few years ago, Kashmir was, maybe a decade ago, Kashmir was a place of immense violence, great danger. And the Indian government could have said, you know, this is such a big trouble, we'll just bomb Kashmir and destroy everything. Well, we don't want to control a massive graveyard, isn't it? We want Kashmir. So what did they do? Those elements which were completely hostile, not ready to negotiate, compromise at all, those were liquidated. Those people, those terrorists were eliminated. But after that, the other people, their trust was won over. Still there are disruptive elements over there. But to a large extent, at least in Jammu, not in Srinagar, Jammu things are fairly peaceful. There's international G20, this conferences were held over there. And so the idea was that there was control use, there was military power use. But the point is, we don't want Kashmir to be enslaved. We want Kashmir to be happily integrated with India. Like that, our mind has to be happily integrated with us. And that's why it's important how we approach our mind. See, there are two extremes in dealing with the mind. So first, till now I talked about the concept of the mind. The concept is that the mind is basically a tool, and it is the mind is a tool. It is necessary for functioning. We need the mind. That when we interact with the world, we need the mind for interaction. Now, of course, there are parts of the mind which are against us, and we will try to understand those. But let me just complete this point about we need to have a healthy relationship with our mind. Now, there could be two extremes. Now, we could say our mind is a part of ourselves. So, we could take it forward and say we should need to have a healthy relationship with ourselves. We often talk of relationship with others. But what about our relationship with ourselves? You know, if there is too much control, then there will be suffocation. Every single aspect of our life we try to rigidly discipline. Then it's like if India gives no space to Kashmir, people will rebel over there. If every single decision in Kashmir is taken by the central government and people there have no say at all, it's not going to work. You know that. So after the First World War, Germany was defeated and the Allied powers made a treaty called the Treaty of Versailles, which was extremely humiliating for Germany. And the result of that treaty was that basically the people felt so suffocated, frustrated, enraged that they ended up basically laying the ground for Hitler's National Socialism movement. And the Nazi movement came up eventually. And that led to the Second World War, which was much, much worse. So too much control will lead to suffocation, and suffocation will eventually lead to explosion. So somebody tries to have too harsh a discipline, it won't work. We'll talk about what too harsh a discipline means, but let's look at the principle over here. And then if there is too little control, that will also not work. Because our mind is very unsteady. Okay, today I want to study, tomorrow I want to play, next day I want to be a movie star, fourth day I want to be an IPL player, fifth day I want to do it. First is change our relationship with our mind. And second is change our mind. First is change our relationship with our mind. Krishna talks about this in 14.22 to 25. And change our mind, he talks about this in 14.26. We'll discuss these verses. But before we go into this, developing a healthy relationship with our mind, let's try to understand why does the mind work against us. So, like if India has to improve its relationship with Kashmir, now what has gone wrong? Why are the relationship bad right now? So there is a part of us, something inside us which works against us. So why does it work against us? So now basically, till now I talked about how the mind gives information. Information goes in and then intention goes out. But the point is the mind is not just a transmitter of consciousness. It is a transmitter. Transmitter means like information goes in and intention comes out. So it is a transmitter, but that's only one part of it. Along with that, it is also a transformer. Transformer means what? Say for example, right now, if this is the mind, so some data comes from, say I'm speaking some words. So this is just some sound, some audio data is coming in. Now, inside the mind is your memory of the English language. If some of you don't know English, then whatever I am speaking, it's just sound which is coming in. And that sound will just be noise. Isn't it? It just makes no sense. So the mind is not just a transmitter of data. It transforms. And sometimes it transforms in a constructive way. So that's the place where our memories are stored. And so the memories, so what you are hearing right now, that is linking with what you have heard in the past. And that's how the comprehension happens. So the sound may go in, but that sound expands when it passes through the mind. And then what happens is meaning is what goes to the soul. Now what exactly it means, how to evaluate it, that's up to the person. But the mind is also a transformer. Say for example, if I'm sitting here right now and say suddenly from behind a giant snake comes up and it's moving its fangs over here. Now if you see that, what is going to happen? You're like, hey, that's a snake. Either you will run away or you'll warn me. Why? Because it's not just some visual information coming in. That visual information couples with the memory in your head that snakes are dangerous. So we have to protect ourselves, we have to protect each other. What do we do? So the mind contains the memories. Now here I am using the word mind generically for the subtle body, for the entire software setup. Let's not get into the difference at this stage between mind, intelligence and all that. Basically, there is something inside us which transforms. The simple data that is coming in, it is transformed into more meaningful information. So now the mind is a transmitter and a transformer. So with respect to these two functions, so this is the proper functions of the mind. But the same aspects, the mind can malfunction. Now when the mind malfunctions, there's a difference between malfunction and dysfunctional. Dysfunctional means it just stops functioning. But malfunction means it functions wrongly. So instead of being a transmitter, it can lead to distraction. It can become a distractor. Now what does a distractor mean? Let's say the soul is here, the body is here, but the mind has gone here. So what happens is, when the consciousness, some of it is coming through the body, most of it has gone to the mind. And then, say for example, when there is a long talk, the mind goes for a walk. And if there is some humor, the mind comes running back. Hey, what was the joke? I also want to laugh. So the idea is, when distraction happens, then, like we use the word absent-minded. So what is happening? The body is here, the soul is here, but the mind is not here. So then the consciousness gets split. So nowadays a lot of young people are being diagnosed with ADHD. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So what happens for them is, they are reading, but they are just not reading. Their eyes are there, their book is there, but their mind is everywhere except there. So the distraction is, the consciousness gets split. And sometimes the mind may take 10% of the consciousness and the body may still have 90%. Sometimes the mind may take 90% of the consciousness and the body may just have 10%. So it can vary the degree of distraction. But distraction is what can lead us to malfunction. Now when there is distraction, the result is that we underperform. We were hearing something, we go to a class, we are hearing the class, because we are distracted, we get only 10% of it. If we have to give some exam afterwards, then again we have to spend the same time to read it all again, to try to understand it. So the mind can be a distractor. But the more damaging aspect of the mind is, it can be a distorter. Distorter means what? That when some stimulus comes into the mind, something small comes in, it just becomes huge within the mind. It just becomes so huge that it consumes the consciousness. So for example, say somebody is an alcoholic and they go to some very important meeting. It's some hotel and it's a big call contract that is supposed to come in. And while they're passing by, they see, oh, there's so many different alcoholic drinks. They see and they stare and they just get lost. Some of their colleagues pull them and they go. And now they're talking with their boss, and in their mind, their boss' body changes into a bottle of alcohol. So what has happened is, the alcohol is just one small stimulus that has come in. But the mind has made it huge. So distortion means that a small stimulus becomes very large. Say, if there's someone behind me and they want some attention, they want my attention. So they tap me on the shoulder. And as soon as they tap, if I scream, what happened? And I say, actually I have a sprain over here. If you touch me, it causes a lot of pain. Oh, okay. So the idea is, if there is an injury over here, or injury in the body, from appearance we don't see the injury. But the one sign of an injury is a small stimulus, a huge response. Or it can be the opposite. Now sometimes some parts of the body can get numbed, almost deadened. So somebody touches and then slams and then punches and nothing happens. I say, what's wrong with you? Isn't it? So in both these cases, there is some disease over there. So basically distractor means sometimes there can be a small stimulus and there is a huge response. Or sometimes, so like one small side of alcohol and there is a huge response. Or there was a friend of mine who was in Russia, he was telling me, in USSR formerly, they had one alcohol awareness campaign. So there was an ad on TV. The alcohol awareness video was an ad basically. It was showed a family watching TV. And on TV the announcement comes, the prices of vodka have skyrocketed, have shot up. So there is the father sitting on a big couch drinking vodka. The small child, the son, asked his dad a little fearfully, Dad, will you drink less now? And the father immediately replies, no, you will eat less now. So now, can you imagine what is the monstrous level of insensitivity there? That for my drinking, I am ready to make my own child, whom I am supposed to protect and care for, starve. So what has happened is, there is a huge stimulus. Oh, we won't have money to feed my child. But the response is, there is practically no concern at all. Isn't it? So that person is so caught in the grip of alcohol, he doesn't care only. So both of these are examples of distortion. So if you will see, this distortion and distraction is the way the mind causes us to malfunction. Now, when I said when there is distraction, then we underperform. But when there is distortion, then we can become unproductive. Our actions, we do but nothing happens, or it can even become counterproductive. We end up doing the opposite of what we are meant to do. Say if a doctor is very much gripped by lust, and the doctor is in the emergency department, and there is a patient who is about to die, and the doctor is flirting with the nurse over there. Okay, lust is there in everyone, and the male-female attraction is a natural principle. But if you are a doctor, for you, the patient's life must be more important than flirting with the nurse. Isn't it? But lust can lead to distortion. So, where just having some sexual stimulation becomes more important than saving the life of someone. So, any of the anarthas, lust, anger, greed, they all cause distortion. So, the mind basically malfunctions in two ways. Instead of being a transmitter, it becomes a distractor. Instead of being a transformer, it becomes a distorter. So, now why does this happen? This happens because inside the mind there are impressions. The impressions are there inside the mind. Some of you mentioned how the mind is a reservoir of memories, desires. So these impressions are called samskars. Now the word samskar has two distinct meanings. One is positive and the other is negative. The positive meaning is generally associated with the ceremonies that will create good impressions. Like say there is Janma Samskar, Namakarana Samskar, there is Vivaha Samskar. There are various ceremonies. So those ceremonies are meant to create impressions in our mind. So that is the positive connotation of the word samskar. And many times when important activities are to be done, there are elaborate ceremonies associated with it. Say for example, if we get initiated, then there is a fire sacrifice. There is the spiritual master present, senior devotees present. And in all their presence, we take our vows. So the gravity of it gets impressed in us. So the word impression is something, oh, that is an impressive person. And that means, okay, maybe that person is talented, that person is charismatic, whatever. But we could say an impressive person creates an impression inside us. Isn't it? Oh, you are so impressive. I've forgotten you already. It doesn't work like that, isn't it? So, anything that is impressive, it creates an impression. So the one meaning of the word impression is that it is the ceremonies that create impressions inside us. And these ceremonies have value. So every year we take a group of American yoga students on a tour of India. We take the Rishikesh, Vrindavan. So most of the yoga students are women. And when they come to India, they want to experience India. So in the West, one of the things which people hear about as India is the big fat wedding. See, America, the wedding culture is very different. It's like if a friend calls you for the wedding, you have to pay for yourself, you have to arrange for your accommodation, and you attend the wedding. In India, it's not like that. You arrange for the transportation, you arrange for the accommodation, you go and receive them. So weddings are very big. So there were some of these young women who, in Radha Govinda temple, we had a congregation devotees wedding. So daughter's wedding. So they went for that wedding. And then at the end of the tour, we had a reflection about what part of the yatra they liked. Some of them said, we liked the Kusum Sarovar in Vrindavan. They said it was actually more beautiful than the Taj Mahal. Some of them said they liked the Himalayas in Rishikesh, the site of the Himalayas. So, but 3-4 of those young women, they said, we liked the wedding very much. So then I asked them, okay, what did you like about the wedding? So 2 of them said something very striking. He said, the wedding was so huge, there were 600 people over there. And that they only went for about half a day, but they said the wedding itself was 3 days. And they said that after attending a wedding like that, you can never forget that you are married. Now, you will say, if you are married, how can you forget that you are married? It's such a serious thing. But, if a man and a woman just go to a court and there are 2 witnesses and you sign something over there, that gravitas of that commitment, it doesn't get impressed on the mind, isn't it? So, sometimes the wedding can just be for a big show off, for the families to flaunt their wealth. But all that, those rituals and the ceremonies, they have a purpose. In front of all these people, we took our marriage vows. We circumambulated the fire. There's a gravity to it. So samskara at one level refers to the impressions. It also refers to the ceremonies that create the impressions. Okay? So for example, now if you have come for this camp, now you'll be staying here for several days, you'll be attending classes, you'll be doing kirtan, you'll be going to various places. So this is going to create some scars. This is going to create some impressions. So now in a negative sense, samskaras also refer to the unhealthy or unwanted impressions that are there inside us. So, my past samskars are troubling me. In this sense, you could spell the word in English as some scars. So, we all have some scars inside us. We all have had some experiences. And because of those experiences, we may be afraid of something, we may be angry about something. Say somebody in the childhood was bitten by a dog. Then as soon as they see a dog, even if the dog is a small, cuddly little poodle, but still for them that dog becomes reduced to its teeth. And those teeth bite. I want to be away from it. So that's some scar. Where there is the sight of a dog creates fear. Like that, we all have certain samskars inside us. And those samskars, what do? They lead to distortion. So healthy samskars will lead to transformation. Say before marriage, a man and a woman might just interact with each other freely. There should be regulation, but they might just flirt a little bit. But if a man remembers that I'm married, the woman remembers I'm married, then that itself creates some gravity. I cannot fool around now. So that is the impression. Then in that case, there is the transformation. The samskar is there, there is a transformation. Now I have to be careful how I deal with people. But if there is lust, if there is especially uncontrolled lust, then as soon as there is some sexual stimulation, the person just forgets everything. Sarva dharman parityajya. Maya mekam sharanam braja. So what happens is, there it is distortion. So basically, we all have certain samskars. Those are impressions inside the mind. And because of these impressions, the mind can distract and the mind can distort. Both of these can happen. So this is how our mind is currently our enemy, because of the unwanted impressions within it. At the same time, it's important to understand that if we consider the impressions within the mind, not all the impressions within the mind are negative. Some impressions are negative, but there are some positive impressions also. Now terms can vary, but I will use terms in a particular sense over here. So the negative impressions can be called as vasanas. These are our impulses. The positive impressions are our vrittis. These are our instincts. So now the impulses are generally anti-intelligent. Anti-intelligent means, say if somebody has an impulse to overeat, then what happens is, even if they know this food is not healthy for me, still the urge to eat comes and they keep eating. Like there are alcoholics, there are foodaholics. There are just people who just can't stop eating. It's no laughing matter for them. It's just that they have a very unhealthy relationship with food. So that is an impulse. Even if they know, janan apya atmano hitam karoti bhuyo vivashaha. Even if I know this is bad for me, the impulse is overpowering. Sometimes we know that, if I get angry right now, I'll explode. If I'll explode, it'll cause a lot of trouble. We know it, but still that impulse just comes up very forcefully. In contrast, the vrittis are like programmed intelligence. These are, we just know what is the right thing to do. Say some people may have musical instincts. That means they just pick up an instrument and you start playing it and they play so wonderfully. On YouTube sometimes you see this, India's Got Talent or Britain has got talent. There are these talent shows. They're small kids, 4 or 5 years old, and they can play a flute, they can play a harmonium, they can play a sitar. It's stunning how well they can play. So that is some instinct that they have got. They just know how to do it. Now of course they can be trained and they can become better. But there is some starting point itself which is amazing that they have. Some people may have mathematical intelligence. So some small kid, you ask them some complex mathematical sum. The teacher asks the sum and the student gives the answer and the teacher has to use a calculator to check whether the answer is right. These are just math prodigies. So we some of us may not have that level of extraordinary intelligence, but we all have something which we can do well, we can do it faster than others. Some people may have linguistic intelligence. They just know the right word to use. And we are trying to express a thought in a particular way. And when they say, hey, that's the word I wanted to use. Now we know the word, but we just don't get the word at that time. Isn't it? So on the other hand, they just get it. So these are instincts. Now some people just don't have the instincts. Some people say, some kids they pick up, or some people just they pick up a kartal and they start playing, or they pick up a mridanga and start playing, they pick a dole and start playing. And people say it's amazing. And people say more. Some other people start playing and the people say no more. So what's happening is some people just don't have the instincts. Now where do those instincts come from? That is also from the subtle body. So basically inside us there are some things which are good. And the whole Varnashram Dharma, Varna is based on the development of the vrittis. So actually the vrittis need to be discovered and developed. Each of us have certain gifts and these need to be discovered and developed. In contrast, the vasanas need to be reduced and removed. Before that, of course, they need to be regulated. So regulated so that they can be reduced and removed. So if somebody has anger, that needs to be regulated so that it can be reduced and removed. There are two opposite things. Like going back to the Kashmir example, if there are some insurgent elements, they have to be either imprisoned or they have to be liquidated. But those who are resourceful, those who are talented, see most people, they are not really interested in, very few people want to make religion their cause or patriotism their cause or communism their cause. Most people just want to get on with their life. They want to get on with their life, to get on with their families, they want to take care of their children. And if they are not able to do that, then they try to find some cause, bigger cause, which they hope will eventually help them to take care of their life. So if I become a communist, I'll bring the communists to power and then the communists will take care of me. The idea is, most people are not ideologues. Most people just want to get on with their life. So, if there are people who are responsible, say, if there are people in Kashmir who can become good teachers, who can become good administrators, who can become good law enforcers, then we discover them, we develop them. So the idea is, in our inner world also, both these aspects are there. And these two require opposite treatments almost. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, in 3:34-35, Krishna says that what is natural for us in terms of the vrittis, he says, Nigraha kim karishyasi. He says that everybody acts according to their nature. That sadrusham cheshtate swasya prakriter jnanavanapi. That even the jnanavan, even the wise people act according to their nature. Prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyasi. And what can repression accomplish? So now there are some people who they read the Bhagavad Gita not to understand the Bhagavad Gita, but to use the Bhagavad Gita to propagate their understanding. So Prabhupada said, this is not Bhagavad Gita as it is, this is Bhagavad Gita as you are. So there is one commentator whose whole philosophy was Sambhog se Samadhi. And for him, this verse 334 is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Nigraha kim karishyasi. What can repression accomplish? Therefore, he said, every man who is attracted to a woman, he should enjoy with that woman. Every woman who sees that a man is attracted to her, the woman should let that man enjoy. By that, the woman and the man are helping each other go toward enlightenment. Well, the only enlightenment that is going to be there is entanglement. There is no enlightenment that is going to happen over there. When Krishna is saying Nigraha kim parishyasi, if you see just before and after that, 334 is Nigraha kim karishyasi. That is what can repression accomplish. But 333 is that Indriyasya Indriyasyarthe Raga Dvesha Vyavastitau Tayor Navashamagachetau Yasya Paribantino. Krishna is saying the senses and the sense objects, there's a natural attachment inside them. Don't succumb to this. Regulate yourself. And in fact, just after this 336 to 343 is an entire section which is all about controlling lust. Arjuna is asking, there is something inside us which makes us act sinfully. What do we do about it? And Krishna says, you have to control it. So, even Arjuna understands that Nigraha Kim Karishyasi is not a license for just indulging whatever we want. What Krishna is specifically telling Arjuna is, with this Nigraha Kim Karishyasi, is that you by nature are a Kshatriya. You are a warrior. You are a protector. Right now, you may say, oh, these are my relatives and I don't want to fight against them. And you may say that, okay, let them go. But in future, when you hear that they are committing atrocities, that they are victimizing innocent people, at that time, the protector within you will rise. And if you have renounced the world, then you won't have any opportunity, any role to play by which you can actually act as a protector. Therefore, if you are a natural protector, then what is the point of repressing your nature? Nigraha kim karishyasi. And Arjuna is himself asking, yes, I am a protector, but a protector also can very easily become an exploiter. Because protectors by nature are powerful. They have power, they have more physical power, they have more martial power. So he says, okay, if you say I am a protector, Duryodhana is also a protector. But instead of being a protector, he has become a predator. So what happened? What went wrong? So Krishna is talking about the vritti. He says, don't repress it. But just because somebody is, say, good at music, they may be a good musician, but that doesn't make them a good human being, isn't it? They may be a good musician, but they may use their musical ability to become very popular and then to exploit people, to cheat people, to seduce people from the opposite sex and exploit them. So, even if somebody has a vritti and they develop it, still they have to deal with their vasanas. So Arjuna himself is recognizing, yes, that I want to, Krishna, you said, what can repression accomplish? But there is something inside me which works against me and I need to deal with it. Okay, so inside our mind, there are multiple elements. Some elements need to be discovered and developed. That's our vritti. And there is our vasana, which needs to be reduced and then removed. So now I'll come to the last part of this session. That how do we go about doing this? This is going to be a little technical. So if you find it difficult, don't worry. I'll make it even more difficult. Well, not really. So I said that when we are dealing with our mind, see, the enemy metaphor has its utility. There is, have you heard of this term called Shakha Chandra Nyaya? Who has heard it? Shakha Chandra Nyaya. What does it mean?
Means that when there is a moon, for indicating that there is shakha of a tree, and you indicate that between two shakhas the object is the
Sorry. Okay. As you can see, my drawing vritti is not very good. So, if there is a Chandra over here, and there is some small child over here. Now, the child is to be shown the moon, then the mother may show, can you see this branch? Can you see this branch? And yes, can you see the shining object in between the two? Yes, that is the moon. Oh, now I see the moon. But the child says, okay, I'll climb up onto the tree and catch the moon. No, the moon is not there. The moon is far away. So, the Shakha Chandra Nyaya refers to what? That the Shakha is the branches. And the moon, Chandra is of course the moon. Nyaya is logic. So what logic means? That which is far away, that is very difficult to access. We can access that which something which is very close. So any metaphor, any analogy that we use. So the metaphors are like branches. And the concept actually is like the moon. So no one metaphor is sufficient to understand a philosophical concept. So one metaphor that is often used is the mind is the enemy. So now it is true it is the enemy, but then we nuanced it. It's not supposed to be killed, it's not to be enslaved. There is something inside the mind which is the enemy. So it's not entirely an enemy. Like Kashmir is not the enemy of India. In Kashmir there are people who are enemies of India. So enemy is one metaphor we could use. So we'll talk about two distinct other metaphors to understand how to deal with the mind. So mind management, I mentioned earlier, there are two approaches to it. Does anyone remember the two approaches? Change our relationship with our mind. And second is change our mind. So which is easier? All of you are very confident. Neither of them is easy. But yeah, that's why my question was which is easier. Both of them are difficult, but relatively speaking, this is easier, this is tougher. So now Krishna talks about this in 14:21. I'll explain the meaning of this verse and then we'll recite this. This is 14:22-23. It's a long series, but I'll just explain. So prakasham cha pravrittim cha. So prakash is illumination. Sometimes inside us there is clarity. We feel very peaceful, we feel very clear-headed. This is important for me, I'm going to focus on this. All these things are not important, I'll neglect them. So prakash is there. Sometimes prakash is associated with sattva guna. Sometimes pravritti is there. Come on, kuch kar dikhana hai. I want to come first in my class. I want to be better than this everyone. I want to do this, I want to do that. We have a lot of urge to do things. Pravritti. Then sometimes moha is there. Come on, Hey, so many people have come, so many people have died. I also come, I also die. Let me just sit peacefully and watch TV. So sometimes moha is there. So these are all what we can call our moods. So these are all various moods which come. Prakasham cha pravrittim cha. Moham eva cha pandava. So Krishna says, when these will come on their own. If they come, na dveshti. Don't be jealous of them. Don't be irritated with them. Don't be frustrated with them. Na dveshti sampravrittani. If they come, don't get sampravrittani. They will come, don't get caught up in them. And they will go away. So, na nivrittani kankshati. If they go away, sometimes we feel clear-headed. Sometimes you don't feel, if only I would feel clear-headed, I would be able to do so much more. Na nivrittani kankshati. They will come, they will go. Na dveshti sampravrittani. Na nivrittani kankshati. Then what happens? How should you do? Krishna says, Udasin vad asino. Asino is be situated. Earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a question. Sitapragyasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava siddhi kim prabhaseta kim asita vrajeta kim. How is this person seated? So, asino. Krishna says, be seated as if udasin, be detached. What? Like detached, situated like detached. And gunair, all this comes because of the three modes. Gunair yo na vichalyate. Don't be shaken by them. Udasina vadasino. Gunair yo na vichalyate. So guna vartantya. Vartanta ityevam. This is just a result of the modes. Sometimes the mode of passion is high. I will feel all this pulling. I have to do this, I have to eat this, I have to watch this. There's so many things I want to do. Sometimes the mode of ignorance is there. I just don't feel like doing anything at all. This is just the modes. They will come and they will go. Guna vartantityeva. Yo avatishtati na ingate. Remember that you are the soul, you are not the mind. The modes influence the mind. Don't be shaken by that. Guna vartantyevam. Yovatishtati nengate. So, avatishtati. So, let's look at what this means. Practically speaking. So, what we could do is that to understand this, first is change our relationship with our mind. So we and our mind. So what happens is, our mind is like a child. Krishna says the mind is chanchala. And we are meant to be like our parent. But sometimes what happens is, so this is the healthy situation. But the unhealthy situation is that our mind becomes the parent and we become the child. So what happens is, whatever the mind says, we start doing that. This is an unhealthy situation. We don't want this situation. So now what does it mean? Say if we have taken our child, say if you have a child or if you have a younger sibling, a small sibling, we are taken to a park for playing, and then you are sitting and reading something on your phone, and then suddenly a small child comes running to us and says, "Mummy, Daddy, Bhaiya, go and beat that boy." Now I say, "What? Come on, go and beat that boy." Okay, yes, I'll go and beat that boy. If the parent says that, then the people will say, "You need a parent now," isn't it? So now it's our child who is agitated. We should be concerned. But does that mean we immediately do whatever the child is telling us? No. What do we need to do is, what happened? No, go and beat that kid. No, first tell me what happened. So first we need to pause and then analyze. What is the child saying? And after we analyze, then we decide, okay, that child teased you, that child slapped you. Okay, let me go and ask the child, or let me go and ask his parents what actually happened. Because whenever there is some conflict, there is one side of the story, and then there is the other side of the story, and then there is the story. So, even two sides of the story don't actually make the full story. So we have to first at least find out what actually happened. So like that, if we treat our mind like our child, our mind may say, "Come on, just go to sleep. Just eat this. Just watch this." So our mind may come up based on its impulses with many things. So Krishna is saying over here, if we understand that the mind is like a child, it's affected by the modes. It's like, see, the modes are often associated with our moods. The child based on the mood, one day may say, "I don't want to study at all." Next day may say, "I want to study." Next day may say many things. So if this is the soul and we are very attached, then the mind becomes very close. And in this situation what happens is, if we are attached, whatever the mind says, we immediately do it. So in this situation, the mind becomes the master, the controller, the slave driver of the soul. This is how the person becomes bound. But what we can do is, if this is the soul, we can create a distance between us and the mind. Krishna explains, to deal with the mind, there are two formulas, Abhyasa and Vairagya. Now these two can be understood in many different ways. That is, Abhyasa is practice, Vairagya is detachment. Now one way to understand is, we create some Vairagya by creating some distance. Distance between us and our mind. So this distance could be created. Say if something is very close to us, then we can create a pad. A pad. Now, say if something very uncomfortable is there, say if we are wearing a bag, which belt is very sharp, then we might get some padding, so that the belt doesn't cut into our skin. So PAD is the 3 steps: pause, analyze, and then decide. So just like if our child say, come on, go and beat that boy. No, let's pause, wait. What happened? Tell me. No, go and beat. No, first tell me what happened. And the child starts telling, just having to tell also, that will calm the child a little bit down. Because he has to think what actually happened. He has to express what has happened. So analyze what is being said. And then decide. Now, this is not very easy to do in the heat of the moment. But if we can plan in advance, then it can become possible. We can start with one area where we do need control. Maybe say we may decide, when I get angry, I yell at people. So whenever the urge for anger comes, when does it come in my life? Okay, with this person, I find it very difficult to deal with this person. So okay, then whenever I'm dealing with this person, maybe I'll prepare in advance. Maybe I'll have somebody else with me when I meet this person. I'll take a few deep breaths. And we can prepare in advance. So this is more of a sattvic method. It requires sattva. But planning can also create some sattva. So we use an analytical method. The mind is the same. We are also the same right now. But what we are doing is, we are changing our relationship with our mind. Instead of simply obeying our mind, we are creating a distance. The Vairagya is, Vairagya doesn't mean that the parent doesn't care for the child. I care for the child, but that doesn't mean I'm going to immediately listen to and do whatever you're going to tell me to. I'm going to evaluate. So create a little distance. So this is now just learning to pause, learning to bring some sattva guna into our life, learning to do some introspection can help us. So now how exactly details about doing this, we'll talk in our future sessions when we'll go to the 9 stages of bhakti. But at this stage, this coming to sattva will bring some introspectiveness with us. And thus we can learn to pause, analyze, and then decide. This is how we change our relationship with our mind. But what we also want to do is that parenting is first about monitoring the child so that the child is regulated. But it is also that we want the child to grow up, isn't it? The parents cannot always be there around the child to take care of the child, isn't it? So parenting has these two aspects. One is monitoring to see what the child is doing. But then the other is mentoring. Guiding the child so that the child grows up. So that is changing our mind. And changing our mind, it is, so Vairagya is distance and Abhyas is diligence. Diligence means what? That we change the impressions in our mind. The mind has certain impressions within it, but we would like to change the impressions. So we want to make the mind fit. So FIT is an acronym for how we can actually improve our mental fitness. So here, let's go back to the starting example of a software. Specifically, let's take the example of a browser. So, suppose somebody on the browser has visited a particular website. So have any of you heard this small thing in Mumbai? Say, somebody has visited a website called Bollywood.com. they come to a spiritual talk and then they hear about Bhagavad Gita. And they want to know what is Bhagavad Gita. So they open their browser and start typing Bhagavad Gita. They type B. And what happens? Bollywood.com comes. Why? Yes, because their browser is their enemy. Is it? No. The browser just has that past history stored over there. So, although they don't want to go to Bollywood.com, but that just comes as autocomplete. So, our mind is like a browser. Say, something goes wrong. Maybe somebody disrespects us. Or maybe somebody makes fun of us. Or maybe some project we did doesn't succeed. Maybe we didn't pass the exam, get an interview. And then we feel depressed. We feel a little down. We feel negative. And in our past, whenever we felt negative, we just watch some TV. Just go to Insta and watch some reels. One after another, after another. Sometimes people just watch so many reels that they start reeling after that. What happened? What are you watching? What am I watching? I don't even know what I was watching. So it's like people they use the word space out. So space out means what? That the space is so much out there that you don't know where you are in that space. So it is completely spaced out. So it happens sometimes. So that may be our default response. So whenever we feel a little down, that's what we want to do. But now maybe we have heard some Shastra. Now we have learned about some spirituality. And say we do some kirtan. And whenever we sing some kirtan, we hear some kirtan, we feel good. And we know that maybe, hearing some soothing spiritual music, singing some devotional songs, that's a better way to deal with negative feelings. And we may want to do that. But as soon as we feel negative, okay, I want some relief. So we type B, and what comes as autocomplete is Bollywood. So like that, as soon as relief. Now, I may want relief. Now, one could be movies. I'll just watch some movie scenes. Other could be meditation. Now, both can give relief. And maybe meditation can give actually better relief than movies. But because the browser history, the mind's record, the mind's samskaras are what? In the past, whenever we needed relief, we watch movies. So immediately, what comes up in our mind is, watch movies. Okay? That's how things work. So, when people ask, why do I do something which I don't want to do? Well, that's because of the impression stored in the mind. Now, how do you change the impressions? Well, there are two things. Or rather, one thing, but two parts of that one thing. So, all that we need to do is, when you type B, all the Bollywood.com comes, we still have to Abhyasa. Bhagavad Gita. You have to type 12 letters. That feels like running 12 miles. But just do it. Now, if we just do it once, we visit bhagavad-gita.com. Next time we type B, still Bollywood may be the first autocomplete. But Bhagavad Gita will also come as a second autocomplete. If you visit Bhagavad Gita twice, thrice, 5 times, what will happen? That will come more and more. So if you visit Bhagavad Gita 25 times, bhagavad-gita.com, and then before that you may have visited Bollywood.com 50 times. But if the recent 25 visits are bhagavad-gita.com, then what will happen? As soon as you type B, bhagavad-gita.com will come as autocomplete. So all that is required for changing the browser the browser's autocomplete is to just change the choices that we do right now. Don't worry about why Bollywood.com is there in the past, why it is coming from as autocomplete. Okay, it is there. But right now, we don't have an option in our mind to delete our browser history. There is no incognito mode surfing in the mind. None of those options are there. But what we can do is, the mind may be a program device, but the mind is also a programmable device. So, what we need simply, Abhyasa. Abhyasa can mean practice, it can mean repetition. Repeatedly we do something. Practice essentially means do it again and again and again. So that's why I tell you diligence. Diligence means do it again and again. Do it diligently. And in that, I was talking here about we want to make our mind fit. So, FIT. F is how do we change the impressions in our mind? First is frequency. How often do you visit bhagavad-gita.com? The more we visit bhagavad-gita.com, the faster the browser history will change. So like that, the more often we do mantra chanting, the more often we hear kirtan, then what will happen is that impression will form faster inside us. It's not just the frequency, it's also the time duration. So, if we do this for more and more time, say every week you come for a youth program in your youth center, that's good. Every week you're doing 3 hours. In a year, 2-3 hours you're coming to the youth program. In a year, that's a substantial amount of time. But say you come for a camp, where 3 days, 4 days, 1 week you are here, then the time duration is also large. That also creates a deeper impression. Generally, with respect to the browser, there are only 2 things. I said that no metaphor is complete. So, the browser metaphor breaks over here. Because the browser doesn't really care after we visit a site, how interested we are in what is there on the site. Isn't it? How eagerly are we watching what is there on the site? All that the browser history records is how often have we visited, how long have we visited. That's all. But with respect to our mind, the impressions are also determined by the intensity. How much are we involved in what we do? How much are we interested? How much are we emotionally engaged? So, when we are doing kirtans, we are trying to focus our mind on the holy name. We are doing japa, we are trying to be attentive. When we are hearing class, we are not just doing it mechanically. We are getting ourselves involved. The point is to create an impression within us. So, frequency, intensity, time duration. If we just do these things, every mind can be changed. No matter how dark the impressions might be, those impressions can be changed. Just now, somebody might have visited Bollywood.com 50 times, and they visit Bhagavad Gita 25 times, and Bollywood goes down in their browser history in their autocomplete. But somebody else may have visited Bollywood 500 times. And visiting 25 times may not bring about the same change. That doesn't mean that 25 times is not having the effect. It's having the effect, but the past effect is more. So the time required might be more. But this is the process, and the process works. Depending on how much work is there to be done, more time may be required. Now we all may have experienced like some samskaras, some vasanas get reduced and removed also. So maybe some of you were eating meat before you came to bhakti. And then you start practicing bhakti, and then if you are going in a train or a plane, and say the person next to you is eating meat. Now very few devotees will feel tempted. Oh, I want to eat meat. Maybe if you're going in a plane and the person next to you is watching some TV, some movie is there. You may get tempted, maybe what is there in the movie, let me see. But very few people will get tempted to eat meat. Because what happened is, prasad is the higher taste. And, when we take prasad, frequency, intensity, time duration. All 3 are very much there, isn't it? So no matter, we may not be very much intensity when we are sitting in a class. But when it comes to prasad, everybody has intensity. So the positive impressions are being created. And those impressions can and will override the negative impressions. So this is the abhyas. So don't worry if the other conditionings keep coming up. The best way would be that if you want to change our browser history, is just always visit bhagavad-gita.com and never visit bollywood.com. Then Bollywood will just go completely in the background, and it will get so much into the background that it'll go away completely, reduced and removed. But suppose somebody visits 10 times bhagavad-gita.com and then once in a while they visit bollywood.com. That's not the best, but just because they have visited bollywood.com doesn't mean they have to become so disheartened that they stop visiting bhagavad-gita.com now. No. Sometimes the past impressions may need to lead to relapses. Later on we'll talk about anartha nivrutti and how sometimes we may struggle doing that. But don't worry. Even if that happens, just make sure that okay, that happened. Now I want to visit bhagavad-gita.com. Apichet suduracharo bhajate maam ananya bhag. Even if durachar happens, doesn't matter. Bhajate maam ananya bhag. So even if there's a relapse, pick yourself up and continue forming the new impressions. And the healthier impressions that we form will lead to a transformation of the mind. So, in our future sessions, when we talk about the 9 stages of bhakti, till now we are talking about the mind only largely as a mechanical unit. It's like a browser. But we are not talking here about the dimension of a personal relationship with Krishna. I just indicated that when I talk about intensity. But the personal relationship with Krishna and the role of Krishna's mercy in transforming our mind. There are many subtleties over here which are involved, but these are the broad principles. And by these principles, if you understand that, then each one of us can transform ourselves. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. Our broad topic was about mind management. So we talked about it first in terms of the concept or the structure of the mind. So the mind is like the intermediate link between the soul and the body. So for the consciousness, the mind, the consciousness is like the light of awareness and the energy of action for the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas. And for the consciousness, the soul is the root and the mind is like the route, the pathway. So the mind, we discussed about its functioning and its malfunctioning. So functioning is the mind acts as a transmitter of consciousness. But when it malfunctions, it becomes a distractor of consciousness. So transmitter means the mind allows the stimuli from the body to go to the soul. But when it is a distractor, then the mind goes off somewhere else and the consciousness gets split between the mind and the body. And it is meant to be a transformer by which what happens is the raw data that is coming in becomes transformed into comprehensible information. Okay. So like you are just getting some audio data, but it becomes information based on the language that you have learned, the concepts you have learned in the past. But it can become a distorter. Distorter is because sometimes a large stimulus, tiny response, or sometimes a tiny stimulus, a huge response. So essentially, this happens because inside the mind, there are impressions. So we discussed 2 different kinds of impressions. So the impressions, I talked about these as positive. They are the samskaras. They are the ceremonies that create impressions. And in the negative sense, there are the samskars. There are things inside us which make us respond in unhealthy ways. So the positive impressions are the vrittis. These are to be developed and discovered and developed. The negative are the vasanas. These are to be regulated and they're reduced and removed. And if you want to manage our mind, management of the mind, it involves 2 aspects. First is change our relationship with our mind. That we don't let the mind be our boss. Understand that we are like the parent and the mind is like the child. So we put a pad in between us. Pad is what? Pause, analyze, and then decide. So we can do this methodical approach, analytical approach we can adopt more if we come to sattva. More and more. And then change our mind. So the mind, we discussed here the example of the browser. So if the browser has its history, the way to change the history is FIT. What is it? frequency, intensity, and then time duration. So, how often do we do it, how long we do it, and how interested are we doing it. So, if we do this, every mind can be changed. And even before the mind is changed, at least its negative impact on us can be reduced. In this way, each one of us can eventually move towards making our mind our friend, as the Bhagavad Gita urges us to do. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Do we have a mic?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So, as we saw that we have a lot of bad impressions generally which are troubling us. So, there are multiple bad impressions which are there to take care of. So, how to deal with that if multiple impressions are continuously attacking us? If it's one, we can just have a solution for it. We can use fit methodically and all. But if there are multiple things which are troubling us, how to deal with those?
It's tough. Sometimes we have to choose our battles. So basically, for example, say India has had issues with Pakistan, India has had issues with China. So when there was cross-border terrorism, India did some targeted attacks on Pakistan. And at least something has stopped over there. Now India has not done something similar with China right now. We are not big enough. Although Doklam, they have taken some area. That doesn't mean we're just letting China take whatever area it wants. We have taken a stand. But we have not taken the fight to China till. So we are choosing our battles. We are waiting. While we become stronger, China's population is becoming older. India has a younger population. So the demographics will change with time. India now has a bigger population than China's. So China has far more hostility with America. India does not have that. Things will change. So we have to, when we have to fight multiple enemies, then we choose our battles. So some battles we may decide, okay, I can't fight this right now. So it's not that every single battle we have to fight right away. So we choose. Okay, so I want to sleep less, I want to eat less, I want to get angry less, I want to indulge in sensuality less. Many things we have. I may decide what is important for me right now. Okay, if I get angry, I speak terrible words, and then I don't want to ruin my relationship with it. Maybe regulating my anger is the most important thing for me right now. Okay, if I'm sleeping 8 hours, I can come to 7.5, I can come to 7. Maybe coming to 6 hours may take a little time for me. That's okay. So eating, as long as I'm taking prasad, even if I eat a little bit more, it's not such a big deal. We can't, we would like to regulate ourselves, but we have to decide. Which is, when we choose our battles, we do it based on 2 criteria. Which is winnable and which is essential. We can say every battle has to be fought, but which needs to be fought right now. And which is what we can win right now. Some battles may just not be winnable right now. Then accept. That doesn't mean we just keep losing that battle. But we create some situation where we can protect ourselves. Where we are overall protected. Okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for this amazing lecture. Like we see some people who takes drugs or indulge in some activities like that. They know the negative impacts of those activities, but even they do it. And on the other hand, we also see that people know the negative impacts and therefore they don't do it. Even they are not practicing Bhakti Yoga. So my question is that, is it a correct methodology to tell our mind that, okay, this may be not helpful for our mental health, physical health, as well as relationship with others? So, like in somewhat degree, we have to captivate our mind, at least, like not to be somewhat stringed.
Okay, good question. See, there are multiple stages if you have to win the war. You can never win the war unless you are first realizing you are in the war. Isn't it? that if I don't realize that this person is my enemy, if you're thinking that we are our friends, like India in 1965, India was the Panchashil we had signed with China, and India was under the notion that actually 1961, 62, the 60s, we're thinking China is our friend. And one fine day, or not so fine day actually, China just attacked India. India was completely unprepared. So at that time, whatever, we don't want to talk about political aspects. The point is that if you don't realize, in real world politics, there are no permanent friends. There are only permanent national interests. So, in the Second World War, America and Russia joined together to fight against a common enemy, Germany. But after that, they divided Germany and both started fighting over Germany. Isn't it? So, things change. So, the point is that we have to first have that knowledge. Not just the knowledge, you need conviction that this is a war and I need to fight this war. Without that, there is no chance of victory. But just by understanding also is not enough. Say, Bhutan or Nepal may understand that China is encroaching on their territory. China is the enemy. But they are so small. What are they going to do against China? Isn't it? After conviction, that is very important. But after conviction, there has to be some strategy. There has to be some plan that has to be made. There has to be some analysis to come up with some kind of strategy, some kind of plan. Without that, it's not going to work. So, after there's conviction, then there is a process. So, whatever is the process. And after the process, if the process works, then there is victory. So, like that, what happens is, first, there has to be conviction of intelligence. Then the process is focusing the mind on Krishna. Yena kena prakarena Krishna niveshayet. And after that process is followed, then their victory is mai asakta manaha. There is purification of the mind. Purification basically means that the mind becomes attached to Krishna. Right now, the mind is attached to worldly things. So first, I need to understand. Like many alcoholics, they may think, yeah, alcohol is not good, but it is not all that bad also, you know. Or people make a big fuss and cry about it. Yeah, Krishna is good, but Maya is also not all that bad. So first, there has to be conviction. And that's why hearing is important. So sometimes, like you said, sometimes we may know and not do it, and sometimes some people may not even know, but still they may not do some things. Because they don't have those impressions. Like some people may consciously know drugs are very bad. So, I don't want to do it, but still they may do it. Some people may not have read about drugs, heard about drugs. They just have no inclination to try it. Maybe because their parents raised them in a particular way. Maybe they have some scars from the previous life. There's just no attraction toward them at all. So, if there is no impression in that direction, then there may be no battle at all over there. So yes, it's possible that for some people, they just don't need the knowledge because there is no temptation over there. But for us, if the temptation is there, knowledge is required. So don't downplay the knowledge, but it's not that knowledge is not important. But at the same time, don't make the knowledge the sole factor. The knowledge gives us the conviction that I have to fight this war. And then we can find out the means to fight the war. And then we win the war. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Any other questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, does intelligence comes from the soul? Means I have read somewhere. Does intelligence come from soul? Or
There are two ways of looking at it. One is everything comes from the soul. The second is nothing comes from the soul. See, what I mean by this is that the soul is the source of consciousness. The soul is the sole source of consciousness. Consciousness is the energy, and nowhere else is the source of energy. So if you want to complicate this, it's the software. Now in the software there might be a virus. There might be an antivirus software. Now both of these will work only when the user turns on the power. If the power is off, neither the virus works nor the antivirus works. Isn't it? So the soul and the soul's consciousness is like the power being turned on by the user. Without that, nothing will work. So in that sense, everything comes from the soul. Now, having said that, in our conditioned stage, the subtle body, the soul is almost like asleep. Not fully asleep, but the soul's spiritual desires are very little activated right now. Say somebody may say that, oh, I am very attracted to Lord Ram. I am practicing Krishna Bhakti, but I am attracted to Lord Ram. Does that mean that actually my Swarupa in the spiritual world is that I belong to Ayodhya and I have an eternal relationship with Ayodhya? Maybe. Or maybe it is just that in our childhood we grew up in a place where Ram Bhakti was there. So our attraction to Ram that is there may be much more cultural rather than spiritual. Cultural means from the culture that we experienced in our childhood. Spiritual means coming from the soul. So now from where it is coming really doesn't matter. If you are attracted to any form of the Lord, that is auspicious. Yena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet. So at our stage, if somebody gets the buddhi, the buddhi, oh, Maya is angel, I should stay away from it. Krishna is my well-wisher. I want to stay connected with Krishna. If you get that buddhi, that is auspicious. From wherever it comes, doesn't matter. Can it sometimes come from the soul in the sense that maybe if I am previous life's practice, there is some spiritual inclination that is activated and that's what draws a person towards Krishna? That's possible. Is it that it could just be sattvic buddhi that has come from our upbringing, that has come from what we have read and learned? It's possible. Could it be that it has come from our present hearing and our association with devotee? That's possible. So it doesn't matter. Buddhi is a good resource. Wherever it comes from, we just use it in Krishna's service. That's why at our level, yena kena prakarena mana Krishna nivesha. Somehow or other, fix the mind in Krishna. Okay? Thank you. Okay. Where is the mic?
Thank you for the class, Pro. Pro, intensity comes by default in negative things. Like you were giving example that as soon as we write B, Bollywood comes automatically, but to write Bhagavad Gita, we have to do austerity. So for that you told fit analogy that you give. So that intensity part of fit, how do we get it in this intensity in positive things and that too consistently?
Mainly by association. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. In association, desires develop. So when we associate with intense devotees, that's what creates intensity within us. That's the easiest way. Stay in association, the intensity will keep. Say, if we are alone and chanting, we may look at our phone, we may go to sleep, we may go here, there. They're sitting with devotees and doing japa. If somebody is sitting really seriously trying to chant, seeing them, okay, let me also chant seriously. So associate with intense devotees. That's the easiest way. Also developing our intelligence. Intelligence has many aspects, but one aspect of intelligence is to see the consequences. So if we see the consequences, then intensity comes up. Like say somebody may know, okay, meat eating is bad, I should give it up, but I like meat too much. But then they get a heart attack. And doctor says, if you don't want to get a heart attack again, you must avoid meat. Then immediately that person becomes serious. Okay, I have to give up meat. Although I have craving for meat, maybe I'll find out some substances which can give a taste similar to meat. And I'll eat those substances, but I'll not take meat. So they will find something. So intensity can either come by association, which is relatively easier, or it can come by regular nourishing of the intelligence. This is important. This is vital. This is indispensable for me. So at our level, especially in youth, that level of intelligence is very difficult to sustain. Because at our level, the whole world seems to be like a playground for us. And yeah, the world is dukkhalaya, but Maybe. Yeah, it will become Dukkhala when I get old. Right now, there is so much potential. So, it is very difficult in youth to sustain us. Philosophy is very important. But to sustain ourselves by philosophy alone is not very easy. We need association which inspires us with positive desires, a positive drive. And that's what will keep us moving forward. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the class. Prabhuji, sometimes we will be in a situation where we have to act very fast. We have to act, but we are not able to understand how is it good or bad? Means how to act. So at that time what we
Just
should
do our best. Life doesn't always give us that luxury to put a pad. That time we just do our best, and after that we learn. In life, there is no guarantee that we will never make mistakes. But we can learn from our mistakes. That means, say, we look back at ourselves by self-observation, can understand in which situations, when we take decisions in the moment, our decisions turn out to be right. Sometimes people say there is a gut feeling, a sixth sense, and it works at times. So some captains in cricket say they take a decision, let's give the ball to this bowler. And that bowler just bowls so well at that time. Those kind of decisions may not always work, but many times they work. So, now for all of us, we may by self-observation learn. In these situations, I seem to have that instinct by which the decision that I get is right. But in some areas, you may realize, I don't have good instincts over here. So, some people may be very good in handling money. Should I invest money over here? Should I not invest money over here? But those same people may not be very good in deciding who is trustworthy in terms of, okay, who is speaking truth, who is not speaking very truth. This person is speaking very sweetly, but there might be some tics in their personality which should cause a red signal to go up. So maybe we are not very good at reading people. Then if we know that, then maybe in those areas, we consciously endeavor to create a pause. If that person says, let's make a decision right now. No, not now. Let me think about it. Maybe talk with some other people. Get some other people to talk with that person. So like that we learn what our strengths are, and there we can take decisions in the moment, and we understand where our weaknesses are, and there we consciously try to slow things down. Okay? Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, you said like we had a need to discover the Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu said like we have the need to discover our vrittis, right?
Need to?
Discover our vrittis.
Discover our vrittis, yeah.
So why?
Why? Because those are gifts given to us by Krishna. Paurusham Nrishu. Krishna says, I am ability in people. So like if our parents or our grandparents have kept a treasure hidden for us, buried in our backyard. Somebody asks, why do I need to dig that out? It's for us, isn't it? See, Arjuna had some great talent for archery, but still he had to develop it. One reason his name was 𝐂𝐻𝐌𝐌𝐔𝐍𝐈𝐓𝐘 was that daytime he would learn archery, and late into the night he would practice that archery. That's how he became so good. Okay?
Another question, can I ask?
Yeah.
You said like bad impression can be imprinted in our mind by the single thought also, correct?
What, Barry?
Bad impressions can be imprinted in our mind by a single thought also, I think.
Can a single thought create impressions? Possible, but it is that once that thought comes in, are we replaying that? Like Ajamil saw something. Now he had not gone out just to see something negative. He was actually going on his work only, his service. But then he saw something. Now he didn't intend to see it, but he saw it. And that was just sight for a few moments, maybe a few minutes. He just was caught by it. But even after he came back, that kept replaying in his mind. And that replaying just created so much force of impression.
So,
that's how he got caught.
So how should we be cautious enough to avoid that thing?
Well, for every one of us, there are boundaries in our life. There are some boundaries that are individual, and there are some boundaries which are social. So individual means that we ourselves know, I should not do like this. Say for example, we all may get angry. And to get angry is human. But when we get angry, we may raise our voice. Now that's not very good. But some people may not just raise their voice, they may raise their voice and speak obscenities, use foul words. Now that's even worse than just speaking bad words. Than just raising your voice. So now some people may go further and maybe raise their fists and slap or punch someone. So now each of these are boundaries. Now if a person is very cultured and disciplined, they say, I may raise my voice, but I am never going to use obscenities. Now we all have that sense. Say now that in certain settings, say if you are talking with our boss in office, you are talking with a college professor, no matter how much angry we get, we are not going to use foul words over there. Isn't it? So we have a sense of boundaries ourselves. So for us, if we have cultivated a sense of boundaries, then even if a thought comes in, and even a thought that wreaks havoc inside us, that impels us to do certain things, but still some amount of boundaries will keep us regulated. And if we are in a cultured society, especially where we are within a hierarchy, not that we are at the top of the hierarchy. So if we are within a hierarchy, then there will be people above us. So they will stop us. That's why if somebody is at the top of the hierarchy and they are not on top of their impulses, then that's a dangerous thing. That is a very high outer power and very low inner power. Yeah, that's a deadly combination to be in. Ravan was like that. In Lanka, he was at a very high outer power. Nobody could challenge him. And very low inner power. At last, for Sita came in, he had no control over it, no desire to control it. That is deadly. So there are no social boundaries. There are people who warned him, but there was no one more powerful to tell him and stop him completely. So that's a deadly situation to be in. Somebody has no individual boundaries, somebody has no social boundaries, then they will be ruined. Okay? Thank you. Okay, one or two last questions. Yeah.
With just a small curiosity too, like you mentioned the one aspect or the component of the mind which is the vasanas and the vrittis, like the samskaras. So is there other components also of?
See, the mind is very complex. It's like a universe in itself. And depending on the framework that we use for analyzing it, it can be analyzed in different ways. So for example, modern psychology talks about subconscious mind. So now, it is just a different framework. It's like if you have a computer, we have a screen. A small amount of data is there on the screen. And there is some folder in which we see all the files are there. But there might be so much data that is hidden. We don't even know it is hidden unless we find out the way to unhide that folders. Not even know about it. So like that, there is a subconscious mind. So sometimes we may have certain impressions deep inside, which unless they are triggered, we don't even know that they are there. So like somebody may have fear for dogs. But if they live in a place where they hardly ever see any dogs, they may not recognize that they have fear for dogs. So like that, we may have something in a subconscious mind that is, you could say that is placed within the vritti and vasana category only, but it might be so deep inside that we don't even know it is there. Like some people may discover that they have talent for music when they are 40, 50, 60. Till that time, they had no serious encounter with music. So that's possible, it happens sometimes. But broadly speaking, we can say that whatever is there inside the mind, some of it is positive, some of it is not so positive. So that's the categorization that we are using at this point. Thank you. Okay. Just those two questions behind. Okay, there are three now. Okay, we'll try to finish this at 6:40, we'll try to finish all three.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So whenever there are multiple failure on some particular path, and two possibilities go in the mind. Either we need to put more endeavor on the same path, or we need to change the path. So how to decide when to change the path and when to put the more endeavors?
It's a difficult decision. Generally speaking, what we need is that there is winning the war. That's one aspect of it. But the other is sustaining the spirit to fight the war. If there's a big cricket tournament, before that only mental games start. Each team may try to intimidate the other players. The Australians are very good at sledging, playing mental games to try to break the spirit of the other side. So if that happens, then the other side will not be able to fight properly also. So for us, it is very important to maintain our spirit. And modern psychology may use the word self-esteem for it. Now, whatever the word we use, we need to have an overall positive view of ourselves. That means that I can change. I have the capacity. I need God's mercy, but I can change. Now, self-esteem comes only in one way. That one way basically has two steps to it. So, have a meaningful goal and take tangible steps toward that goal. When we do these two things, sometimes our self-esteem may be we may get some encouragement by somebody appreciating us, somebody patting us on the back. Hey, you did a good job. You have a lot of potential. I see some talent in you. All those are good things, but those are external. They will come and go. One person may encourage us and 10 people may discourage us. So we can't control those things. But for us, that this is something valuable for me. And I am taking steps in that direction. When we do these two things, that is when natural, healthy, positive emotion is generated within us. We don't necessarily have to achieve that. That human may be very far away. But we are taking steps in that direction. Say, for example, if you study the Bhagavad Gita, feel like this has some wisdom, I want to learn it and I want to share it with others. If you decide that this is something which I want to do in my life, and maybe every day you spend 10 minutes studying the Bhagavad Gita, every day spend 15 minutes hearing some class on the Bhagavad Gita, you get one concept understanding. And slowly you are moving toward that goal. That when we have something worth moving towards, and we are moving towards it, that creates, you can say, natural or organic positive feeling. And as long as we are having at least one area in our life in which we are doing this, then we will be moving forward. And there are other areas where we may not even be sure whether this is the area I want to move towards. Like, that's what your question is. Is this a meaningful goal for that I should try to move toward, keep trying to move towards? Or maybe I'm not going to move toward this. Maybe I have to find some other goal and move towards that. Those are decisions which we have to take. But before we take that decision, it's better to get ourselves in Sattva Guna. Because in Rajo Guna, we will take that decision from a platform of ego. I can do anything. So generally what happens is, in these three gunas, it's our vision of ourselves. That if we are in Rajas, we operate platform of ego. I can do anything. But if we are in Tamas, we operate from a platform of insecurity. I can do nothing. I am worthless. I am good for nothing. But in Sattva, it is that we approach from a healthy platform. That this is the platform of humility. Sometimes we think the opposite of ego is humility. No. It's not two things, it's three things. The opposite of ego is thinking too much about ourselves, or thinking I am better than what I am. The opposite of ego will be insecurity. If ego is Mayavad, I am God, I am everything. Insecurity is Shunyavad. I am nothing. Isn't it? So, humility is what? I am a part of Krishna. 𝐂𝐻𝐌𝐌𝐔𝐍𝐈𝐓𝐘. I am a part, and that means if I am a part, I can do some things. Ego is I can do everything. Insecurity is I can do nothing. But I am a part. I'm not the whole, but I'm a part of the whole. So if I'm a part of the whole, that means I can do some things. So let's find out, rather than making a decision whether I should go on in this path or not go on in this path, first find out which path is always meaningful for us to go according to. And take tangible steps in that direction. And once we have done that, then we come to some level of sattva, we get some level of confidence, we get some level of clarity, and then we can take other decisions. So some devotees get very caught. Should I become a brahmachari or should I become a grahastha? Well, don't worry too much about that. First focus on becoming a devotee. First focus on connecting with Krishna. Whether we become a brahmachari or grahastha, we want to become a devotee. That is something which is always meaningful for us. So focus on that. How can I strengthen my relationship with Krishna? And once I've taken tangible steps in strengthening my relationship with Krishna, then I will have some stability, I will have some clarity. And then I can decide, okay, should I go in this ashram's direction or that ashram's direction? Okay? Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. Oh.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I had a confusion regarding prana. So in like this Puranjana section, it talks about prana like snake who keeps on drinking air.
Can we talk about this a little later?
Okay.
If you don't mind, because it's slightly unrelated. I'm not talking about prana in the class.
Okay.
I'm here for some days. We'll talk later. But okay? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. You wonderfully taught us how do we transform our mind by giving the solution of FIT, increasing the frequency, intensity, and time duration. I wanted to ask, so this is like training the mind to be able to transform better. So, but to be able to apply this solution, I feel that there is not enough intensity for the desire to transform. So, should we also simultaneously work on our spiritual values so that our desire to transform and apply the solution which we hear from the senior Sangha becomes intense, then we apply it properly. Because we also got to hear from other devotees and from you earlier also, but we have failed to apply them because of lack of intensity to transform. So should we also parallelly put some effort in this?
It's a good question. That one thing is having the skill to transform. It's another thing to having the will to transform. So both are required, and each person has to find out what is it that is lacking, and we have to work on gaining that. So sometimes the will is lacking, and if that is the case, then we have to work on the will. And the way we work on the will is generally by contrasting. There are many places if you want to strengthen our will to transform. There are many places in the Gita where Krishna teaches by contrasting. If you do this, this will happen. Mat chitta sarva durgani, mat prasadat tarishas. If you become conscious of me, this will happen. If you don't become conscious of me, this will happen. So it's like we contemplate the best positive result. We contemplate the worst negative result. So we all, maybe if we spend 5 minutes, we can think of, say, 3 positive habits that we already know that if we develop, our life will become better. We all can probably think of 3 negative habits which if we don't work on, they can wreak havoc in our life. So maybe we need to sit down and write things down. Maybe say every day I spend half an hour on social media. Now maybe out of that 10 minutes I'm doing something valuable, remaining 20 minutes I'm wasting. I'm using very modestly. Some people may spend 3 hours or 6 hours also. But whatever it is. So, if those 20 minutes I'm wasting, 20 minutes daily may not seem a lot of time. But 20 minutes in a week, 20 minutes in a year, 20 minutes in 10 years, it's going to be a huge amount of time. So basically, envisioning the consequences of the negatives and envisioning the results of the positives. That's one way we can create the will to change. So another way we can create the will to transform is by associating with or focusing on transformed people. Now, transformed people does not necessarily mean people who are self-realized. Those who are like pure devotees, very exalted. Could think somebody who is a peer like us, but maybe they spend more time in studying Shastra. And maybe we started together, we got a lot of other services, so we couldn't study Shastra so much. But they have focused and they have learned so much. So, hey, I could also, maybe not exactly that level, but I also could have learned more. Sometimes seeing those who have become transformed also inspires us. So now, and of course, sometimes it's just a mystery. What actually transforms us? What actually creates that desire to transform? So it requires Krishna's mercy also. But somehow or the other, if it is the will to transform that is lacking, then we need to build that will. Okay? So the same two things I talked about, like buddhi earlier and sangha. So that's the way generally desire, like intensity is triggered by those two things. By intelligence and by association of those who are intense. Okay? So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.